President Trump's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, will be back in court again tomorrow. This time he'll be sentenced in D.C. District Court for the 2 counts of conspiracy he pleaded guilty to in September. Special counsel Robert Mueller brought the case, which stems from Manafort's work as a political consultant in Ukraine. In his plea deal, Manafort admits to conspiracy to commit tax fraud, money laundering, and other crimes, as well as conspiracy to obstruct justice by tampering with witnesses. D.C. Circuit Court Judge Amy Berman Jackson can sentence Manafort to as much as 10 years in prison. She has a lot of discretion, just like Judge T.S. Ellis had in Manafort's other case in the Eastern District of Virginia. In that case, Manafort faced up to 24 years in prison for 8 counts related to bank and tax fraud, but Ellis sentenced him to less than 4. That sent Twitter into a tailspin last week because Ellis's decision exposed the differences in the way federal law treats certain kinds of crimes. For white-collar crimes, judges like Ellis have flexibility. They're given sentencing guidelines but can use their discretion. But for some crimes, including drug and gun crimes, judges can be handcuffed by mandatory minimums, which stem back to the 1980s, when Congress and previous administrations were waging their wars on crime and drugs. Judges basically have to give harsh sentences to guilty defendants who are more likely to be black and brown people, according to the government's own data. Ken White, a former assistant U.S. attorney who specialized in government fraud and public corruption, says bashing Judge Ellis for letting Manafort off easy isn't the right way to think about this.
The most tempting hot takes, like, this judge was completely biased, he was pro-Trump or anti-special counsel, are usually too simplistic and let the system off the hook. Here you've got a system where vastly fewer white-collar prosecutions happen because we put fewer resources into pursuing them, notwithstanding how much harm they can do. And then prosecutors use their discretion about how to charge them and what deals to offer. That is oftentimes different than the sort of discretion they show to people charged with drug crimes or gun crimes. So all these steps, they all conspire to sort of drive a system where there's a stark disparity.
Judge Ellis, for instance, used his discretion to give Manafort a 47-month sentence. But if a drug dealer gets caught with 100 grams of heroin or 5 grams of meth, he could catch a mandatory 60-month sentence. That's because Congress has basically deemed drugs way scarier than tax fraud, even though tax fraud disenfranchises all of us.
That reflects some social judgments that I don't think are particularly flattering for us. That there's something inherently much more dangerous about drugs or guns than there is about the sorts of white-collar crimes, fraud and tax evasion and all sorts of deceit. So inherently more dangerous that you should be sentenced to dramatically more time.
Now, not all white-collar crimes are created equal. Financial criminals do occasionally get the book thrown at them. Former Enron CEO Jeffrey Skilling was convicted of fraud in 2006. The Enron scheme cost thousands of employees their jobs and retirement savings. He served 12 years and was released just this year. And Ponzi scheme mastermind Bernie Madoff stole billions from his victims. Madoff pleaded guilty to 11 felonies, and he was actually sentenced to the maximum the guidelines would allow, 150 years. But those were exceptionally high-profile crimes with identifiable victims. More often, white-collar crimes are kind of seen as victimless, and the defendants end up with sentences the average drug dealer would be lucky to get. At tomorrow's hearing, Manafort could get as many as 10 years. In determining his sentence, Judge Berman Jackson can take into account Manafort's other crimes, as well as the sentence he was given in Virginia and his behavior since being indicted. And in a way, there is a victim here: the justice system itself. Manafort literally tried to obstruct justice, so maybe she'll give him the full decade. Luckily for Manafort, it's up to the judge.